Philadelphia's Academy of Natural Sciences received a troubling letter in March of 1863, one that threatened to overturn everything its members believed about human intellect. The letter described a 9-year-old colored girl living in a contraband camp outside Alexandria, Virginia, who could repeat entire medical textbooks after hearing them a single time, solve complex mathematical problems without guidance, and speak fluent Latin despite never having been educated. The Academy's senior researcher, Dr. Samuel Collardon, dismissed it at first as abolitionist exaggeration, but when 3 separate military officers confirmed the story, adding that the girl had corrected a camp doctor's medication error and saved 2 soldiers' lives, Collardon became consumed with proving the impossible. According to his private journals, discovered decades later in a sealed wing of the Academy's archives, we found in that camp forced him to burn years of his own research and disappear from public life entirely. Before we return to the account of Eliza Davis and the scientists who tried to make sense of her, let me ask you something. If you're drawn to true historical mysteries that challenge what we think we know, subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments which state or city you're watching from. I'm curious where this community of history lovers calls home. Now, let's uncover what really happened in the spring of 1863. The contraband camps surrounding Alexandria, Virginia, in early 1863 were landscapes where chaos and hope clung tightly together. After President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation went into effect that January, thousands of formerly enslaved people poured into Union-controlled regions seeking protection behind federal lines. Camps spread over muddy fields and abandoned storage buildings, with shelters built from whatever scraps people could gather: rotting canvas, broken planks, sheets of rusted tin. The air constantly carried the smell of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and the cloying sweetness of illness drifting from the medical tents like a permanent fog. In one of these settlements, known simply as Camp Relief No. 7, a strange situation had begun to emerge that spring. The camp held roughly 240 people, most of them women and children whose husbands, fathers, or sons had died, been sold away, or joined the U.S. colored troops forming throughout Union territory. Among them was a girl named Eliza Davis, who had arrived 3 weeks earlier alongside refugees from a tobacco plantation near Richmond that had been burned during a Confederate retreat. Eliza was small for her 9 years, thin in the way of children who had grown up knowing hunger too well. Her skin was the deep tone of polished walnut, her hair braided tightly beneath a faded calico headscarf. She bore a face that might have passed unnoticed in any other environment: large, steady eyes, a narrow nose, lips that rarely curve into a smile. Yet something in her gaze unsettled adults who tried to meet it for too long. Her eyes absorbed everything. They seemed always to be calculating, measuring, storing. The first person to notice that something about Eliza was not ordinary was Lieutenant James Carmichael, a young officer from Massachusetts assigned to camp administration. He had been tasked with conducting a census, recording names, ages, places of origin, and any useful abilities. The job was slow and frustrating, complicated further by the trauma and illiteracy many refugees carried. Their life stories often came out broken, tangled, or incomplete. When Carmichael called for Eliza Davis, the girl stepped toward the makeshift desk with her gaze lowered, as custom demanded. Her guardian, an older woman named Ruth who had traveled with her from Richmond, stood close behind her with quiet protectiveness. "Name?" Carmichael asked, pen ready. "Ella, sir," she whispered. "Family name?" "Davis, sir." That was Master's name. "Age?" 9 years, sir. Born spring of 54. Carmichael continued his usual line of questions, but something on his desk made him pause. He had left open a book he'd been studying earlier that morning. Gray's Anatomy, a medical text he was trying to learn from so he could better understand the sicknesses spreading through the camp. The book lay open to a detailed illustration of the human heart, its chambers and vessels labeled in Latin. Eliza's gaze had locked onto the page with a kind of desperate hunger. "Can you read, girl?" Carmichael asked, though he already knew the law. Teaching enslaved people to read had been illegal throughout the South, punishable by whipping or worse. Eliza hesitated. Ruth shifted uneasily behind her. "It's all right," Carmichael said more gently. "You're free now. No one punishes learning here." "No, sir, I can't read," Eliza murmured, "but I can see the pictures." "What do you see?" Her finger drifted toward the illustration, then withdrew as if the page radiated heat. "That's the heart, sir," she said quietly. "The aorta carries blood from the ventriculus sinister, the left ventricle, through the body. The vena cava brings the blood back. The right side sends it to the lungs through the arteria pulmonalis." Carmichael's pen dropped to the table. "How do you know those terms?" Eliza finally raised her eyes, and in them he saw something like weary acceptance, as though she knew explaining herself would only cause trouble. "Master's boy was studying to be a doctor, sir, before the war. He'd read his lessons aloud, so he could remember them. I cleaned his room while he studied." "And you memorize medical terminology just from hearing it?" "I remember everything I hear, sir. Every word." Carmichael spent the next hour testing her claim. He pulled various refugees aside, spoke to them within Eliza's hearing, and later asked her to repeat what they had said. She repeated conversations word for word, including accents, hesitations, and pronunciation quirks, even when people spoke in German or French. When Carmichael read passages from his medical text aloud, she recited them back with flawless accuracy, including complex anatomical descriptions she couldn't possibly have been exposed to. But what came next disturbed him far more. He asked Eliza to explain the passages. She did, not like someone repeating memorized words, but like someone who genuinely understood them. She described the circulatory system, the functions of organs, the process of respiration, using the correct terminology and explaining concepts that should have required years of formal study. When Carmichael mentioned that one of the camp physicians was struggling to diagnose a patient's strange symptoms, Eliza asked 3 precise questions about the case, then suggested the man likely suffered from pleurisy complicated by malnutrition, and she recommended a specific treatment plan. Her diagnosis was correct. The recommended treatment worked. Within a week, Lieutenant Carmichael's report had moved up his chain of command, reached a superior officer, and then traveled all the way to the War Department in Washington. In the tense political climate of 1863, with the war's outcome still uncertain and the nation scrambling to determine what would happen to millions of newly freed people, Eliza Davis represented something potentially explosive. She was living proof that the racial theories used to justify slavery were scientifically false. The entire Southern social order depended on the belief that people of African descent were intellectually inferior, incapable of advanced reasoning, and suited only for physical labor under white oversight. Northern scientists, even many abolitionists, often accepted these ideas as well, though they argued such limitations came from lack of education rather than inherent inability. But a 9-year-old colored girl who could equal or surpass the intellectual abilities of educated white men, who demonstrated comprehension that seemed to defy all normal boundaries of human cognition, was something far more disruptive. This was not merely unusual. It was dangerous. Dr. Samuel Caldecott received the War Department's directive on April 3, 1863. At 47, he was a respected figure within Philadelphia's Academy of Natural Sciences, one of the country's most prominent practitioners of craniology, the supposed science of determining intellect and racial qualities through skull measurements. He had published widely, and his work was routinely cited in pro-slavery treatises. His data, he claimed, proved that people of African ancestry possess smaller skulls, especially in the frontal regions tied to reasoning, and that their brain structures more closely resembled those of apes than of white Europeans. But the War Department's request carried unusual conditions. Caldecott was to examine the girl in complete secrecy. His findings were to be shared only with specified military officials, and under no circumstances was the public to learn anything about the case. Officials understood the stakes. If abolitionists discovered the story, it would become devastating propaganda. If Southern loyalists learned of it, They would demand the girl's suppression by any means. Caldecott left for Alexandria on April 6, bringing with him his instruments: skull calipers, scales for estimating brain mass, phrenological charts, assorted intelligence assessments, and a small traveling library of racial science volumes. He also brought his assistant, a young medical student named William Drayton, and a stenographer assigned to document every moment of the examination. They arrived at Camp Relief No. 7 on a bleak morning, the spring rain turning footpaths into long trenches of mud. The camp's medical officer, Dr. Marcus Lindell, greeted them with barely concealed irritation. Lindell was a man shaped by war and suffering. He had little patience for academic theories that ignored human reality. "The girl is extraordinary," Lindell said as he led the group toward the tent where Eliza was being quietly observed. "I've tested her myself thoroughly. Her abilities don't match anything I've ever read in medical literature. Everything has a rational explanation," Caldecott replied with a stiff confidence. "I expect we're dealing with an unusually developed memory combined with mimicry. Some individuals from inferior races can be trained to perform complex tasks without understanding them, much the way a parrot can speak without comprehension." Lindell's jaw tightened, but he held his silence. The tent serving as Eliza's quarters was small but neatly arranged: a cot, a chair, a narrow wooden table. Eliza sat on the cot with her hands folded, wearing a plain gray dress donated by a Ladies' Aid Society. Her guardian, Ruth, remained in the corner, watching the arriving white men with an expression that mixed worry and resignation, as though she knew such attention often meant danger. Caldecott's first written impressions, later found in his journal, were clinical to the point of dismissal. Subject appears as typical Negro child, approximately 9 years of age. Small stature, likely attributed to malnutrition common among her race and former condition. Physical exam reveals no abnormalities. Subject compliant, quiet, demonstrating the docility expected of her kind. Then Eliza lifted her gaze, and Caldecott's pen halted. "Good morning, Dr. Caldecott," she said softly. "Dr. Lindell told me you studied in Edinburgh under Professor Knox. I've heard him read some of your papers. You argue that African skulls average 5 cubic inches smaller than Caucasian ones, especially in the frontal regions linked to reasoning and moral sense." Caldecott stared at her, stunned. "How could you know where I studied?" "Dr. Lindell told Lieutenant Carmichael yesterday, sir, at 2:47 in the afternoon. Exactly. You were discussing the Knox controversy and the Burke and Hare murders. The lieutenant asked if that troubled you, considering Knox's contributions to anatomy. You told him science must remain separate from scandal." The tent fell silent. Dr. Lindell confirmed that the conversation had occurred, word for word, at roughly that time, but it had taken place inside his office, more than 200 yards from Eliza's tent. "You couldn't have heard us," Caldecott insisted. "Sound carries in camp, sir," Eliza said gently, "especially when the wind blows from the east like it did yesterday. I hear many conversations." What followed was the most exhaustive intellectual evaluation of Caldecott's career. For 6 straight hours, he tested her. He began with memory passages, reading from texts in English, Latin, Greek, French, and German, languages Eliza insisted she had never formally learned. She repeated every passage precisely, without a single misword. Next came comprehension. Caldecott read dense philosophical arguments from Kant and Hegel, mathematical demonstrations from Euclid, advanced medical excerpts from contemporary journals. After each section, he asked her to explain what she had heard. She did more than explain. She dissected. She identified contradictions in philosophical arguments. She pointed out mathematical errors in published proofs. She questioned medical assumptions Caldecott had never examined himself, asking why certain treatments were accepted when their underlying physiology remained unclear. "Bloodletting for fever," she said during one exchange. Dr. Rush recommended it extensively during the 1793 yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia, but Dr. Lindell's medical texts Say blood carries oxygen to tissues. If someone has a fever, that means their body is fighting an infection. Why remove the blood that carries the resources needed to fight the disease? Wouldn't. Torso. Caldrick had no response. The medical community still argued bitterly about bloodletting's benefits. But Eliza's simple question exposed a logical flaw most physicians ignored. As the examination progressed, the detached scientific posture he had clung to all morning began to crumble. He shifted to arithmetic, complex calculations, algebraic reasoning, full geometric proofs. Eliza solved each one instantly, sometimes giving the correct answer before he even finished writing the equations. When he presented her with a deliberately constructed paradox, a problem containing no possible solution, she identified the contradiction within seconds and explained precisely why the task was impossible. Try music, Dr. Lindell suggested quietly. He had brought his violin. Eliza, can you identify these notes? He played a difficult, cascading passage. B flat, D, F sharp, A, C flat. Eliza said at once, "That's from Mozart's Requiem, the Confutatus Maledictus, measures 43 through 48. But you played the F slightly flat, a quarter tone." Lindell's hand trembled on the bow. "I've never played that piece anywhere she could hear it," he whispered. "Master's daughter practiced Mozart's Requiem for her wedding," Eliza replied calmly. "That was 2 summers ago. She rehearsed it 47 times. I remember every one." 2 years ago? Caldicott's voice snapped like a whip. "You can recall a sequence you heard a single time 2 years in the past?" "I remember everything, sir," Eliza said. "Every sound, every word, every face. I can't forget, even if I want to." The weight of those words settled inside the tent, like a suffocating fog. To remember everything, every moment, every sensation, every trauma, every injustice, with no fading, no mercy, no release, what would that do to a human mind? What kind of life was that? Caldicott spent the next 2 hours searching desperately for a limit. There was none. Her memory was total. Her comprehension was instantaneous. Her analytical reach surpassed that of learned adults with decades of discipline behind them. She could juggle multiple advanced concepts simultaneously and draw connections across distant fields of knowledge that took scholars a lifetime to understand. By late afternoon, Caldicott's assistant, William Drayton, was visibly shaken. "Sir, this exceeds anything ever recorded," he said quietly. "This is beyond intelligence. This is something else entirely." Caldicott's answer was to begin the physical examination, as if disproving her body could protect his theories. If Eliza's mind refused to cooperate with the racial framework he had spent his career building, then perhaps her body would. He measured her skull with calipers, noting dimensions from every angle. He checked her scalp for unusual ridges or depressions according to phrenological charts. He tested her reflexes, sight, and hearing, all normal. Her measurements fell squarely within standard ranges for a child her age. Nothing unusual, nothing deformed, nothing that could explain her abilities according to the science he had dedicated his life to. "Perhaps the theories are flawed," Drayton ventured timidly. Caldicott rounded on him. "The theories are built upon thousands of measurements and decades of recorded observation. They do not simply become wrong. But if this girl... She is an outlier," Caldicott snapped. "Every distribution has anomalies. They do not overturn fundamental principles." Yet even as he spoke, Caldicott felt the lie burning in his throat. His entire career rested on the belief that intellectual inferiority in African people was inherent, biological, permanent, predictive. But here stood a 9-year-old, raised in the harshest conditions imaginable, possessing a mind that surpassed anything Caldicott had seen in any human being, white or otherwise. If she was possible, what else was possible? How many enslaved people had lives and gifts crushed before they ever had the chance to grow? How many scholars, inventors, writers, doctors have been erased by a system designed to prevent their very existence? And if the foundation of racial science cracked here, What did that say about the scientific justification for slavery itself? These thoughts frightened Caldecott more than any ghost tale ever could. They threatened to collapse the intellectual world he had built brick by brick. As night fell, Dr. Lindell arranged quarters for Caldecott and Drayton in the medical section. Caldecott couldn't sleep. He sat hunched at a small desk, candle guttering, flipping through his notes again and again, desperate to salvage his framework. Near midnight, he heard something strange. A voice, female, young, speaking Latin with flawless pronunciation. He followed it to the medical tent. Inside, Eliza stood beside a cot where a soldier writhed in feverish delirium. Dr. Lindell and 2 exhausted orderlies were there as well. The soldier's leg wound, inflicted 3 days earlier, had worsened alarmingly. His flesh had begun to rot. He was expected to die by dawn. The drainage is purulent and foul-smelling, Eliza was saying, her voice steady and clinical. That indicates anaerobic infection. The texts describe it, Clostridium perfringens, though they haven't named it yet. It produces gas in the tissues. You can feel crepitus here. She pressed gently along the soldier's swollen thigh. The tissue is necrotic. Green gangrene. We know it's gangrene, Lindell replied tiredly. We plan to amputate in the morning. You'll be too late, Eliza said. The infection is entering his bloodstream. See the red streaks. She pointed to faint lines climbing the man's leg. That's lymphangitis. By morning, it will be systemic. Amputation won't save him. Then he's going to die, Lindell said flatly. Maybe not. Eliza crossed to a cabinet of medical tools and bottles. 2 weeks ago, I heard you reading from Joseph Lister's paper about carbolic acid, an antiseptic. You have some here. Lindell froze. Lister's methods are experimental. Most surgeons dismiss them. And yes, I have a small vial, but I've never used it. Use it now, Eliza said with quiet urgency. Clean the wound with diluted carbolic solution. Cut away all dead tissue aggressively, even if you have to cut deep. Then pack the wound with carbolic dressing. She met his eyes. It might kill the infection before it reaches his torso. Heart. That's madness, one of the orderlies muttered. Carbolic will burn like fire. He's already dying, Eliza said simply. Just give him a chance. Dr. Lindell looked toward Caldecott, who stood at the tent's entrance, pale and shaken. Doctor, what do you think? Caldecott wanted to refuse. He wanted to declare the child's proposal reckless, the wild assumption of someone too young to grasp what she was suggesting. But it spent the entire day watching her, not just repeating information, but understanding it, dissecting it, applying it more precisely than trained men. He knew, with a sick certainty that twisted his stomach, that the child comprehended the medical reality better than anyone else in that tent. Try it, he heard himself say. The next 2 hours were agonizing. They irrigated the soldier's wound with the diluted carbolic solution while he screamed into the leather strap clamped between his teeth. They carved away dead flesh, cutting deeper than any of them felt comfortable with, following Eliza's calm, precise instructions. They soaked bandages in carbolic acid and packed them deep into the wound. By dawn, the soldier's fever had broken. The red streaks had stopped advancing. He was weak and delirious, trembling from pain, but alive. Over the next week, the wound began to heal. He would lose muscle tissue, but keep his leg. He would survive. Eliza had saved his life using knowledge that mainstream medicine would not fully accept for another 10 years. That morning, Caldecott wrote a preliminary report to the War Department. His hand trembled as he formed the words. Subject demonstrates cognitive capabilities surpassing current scientific comprehension. Memory appears eidetic and total. Comprehension and analytical reasoning function at a level inconsistent with subject's age, background, and racial classification. Physical examination reveals no abnormalities to explain these abilities. Further study is required to determine. He stopped. To determine what? whether his life's work had been built on falsehoods, whether the racial science defending slavery was nothing but a tower of elegant, well-funded lies. Sir, Drayton stood in the doorway holding a dispatch. New instructions from Washington. The orders were brief and chilling. Continue examination. Determine extent of subject abilities. Identify limitations. Assess potential applications. Maintain absolute secrecy. No unauthorized contact. Subject's existence must not become public under any circumstances. The implication was unmistakable. The War Department did not want truth. They wanted control. To them, Eliza Davis was a weapon, or a threat, or both, but not a child, not a human being. Over the following weeks, Caldicott's tests intensified. Additional researchers were brought in, each sworn to secrecy under threat of military consequence. They evaluated Eliza in mathematics, astronomy, languages, biology, chemistry, history, philosophy, music, art. In every subject, she surpassed expectations. She could compute planetary positions without tools. She could speak languages she had heard only once. She could identify chemical compounds by scent alone. She could consume an entire book in one sitting and repeat it word for word years later. She solved mathematical problems in minutes that had taken scholars years. But the strain was visible. Eliza grew thinner, quieter. The brightness in her eyes dulled. She never complained, but Ruth, her guardian, saw what others ignored. She hardly sleeps, Ruth told Dr. Lindell one evening, not realizing Caldicott was listening. And when she does, she screams. She remembers everything, sir. Every whipping she ever seen. Every baby taken from its mama. Every scream. Every beating. Every terrible thing. None of it fades for her. It stays sharp. Fresh. Like it just happened. How does a child survive that? Ruth whispered. The question lodged itself deep in Caldicott's mind. Until that moment, he had viewed Eliza as a scientific phenomenon, an equation waiting to be solved. But she wasn't a specimen. She was a child, with the full, unedited memory of slavery carved into her skull. In early May, something shifted. When Caldicott arrived at the camp one morning, soldiers were rushing in formation, officers whispering urgent orders. Dr. Lindell met him with a hardened expression. There was a Confederate raid last night, he said, 20 miles south. They destroyed another contraband camp, burned everything, killed or captured everyone. Why target a contraband camp? Drayton asked. Because rumors are spreading. Lindell said grimly. About Eliza, we've tried to keep it contained, but news leaks. Stories about a colored girl with impossible abilities. Southern sympathizers want her eliminated before abolitionists use her as proof. Confederate intelligence wants her captured to expose the rumor as a lie. Everyone wants her for their own reasons. That night, Caldicott made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He went to Eliza's tent, alone, no assistants, no instruments, no scientific armor. The tent glowed dimly in candlelight. Shadows trembled across the canvas walls. Eliza sat quietly on her cot with a worn school book in her lap. Ruth slept in the corner, exhausted from tending the sick. Eliza looked up as Caldicott entered, but not with surprise, as if she had known he would come. Eliza, he began, his voice low, I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Do you understand what you are? What your abilities mean? Eliza met his eyes, those eyes that carried entire lifetimes of memory. I understand that I'm dangerous, sir. That's why everyone is afraid. You're not dangerous, Caldicott insisted. You're extraordinary. They're the same thing, she said softly, for someone like me. She closed the book with careful hands, tracing the frayed spine. When you're colored and you're extraordinary, you become a problem. Either you prove things people don't want to accept, or you become something they want to own. She lifted her gaze, steady and ancient. I learned that back on the plantation. Master's son had a hunting dog once, a pointer smarter than any dog he ever trained. It could track anything, understand complicated commands, almost seemed to think like a person. One day, a visiting planter offered Master's son a small fortune for that dog. He refused. A week later, the dog vanished. They found it 3 days after, shot dead in the woods. Master's son cried for a week, but his father told him it was a mercy. Something that's smart and that valuable, he said, would eventually be stolen or cause trouble. Better to end it quickly than let it suffer what would come. Caldecott felt something cold tighten in his gut. You believe someone will kill you? I believe someone will try to use me until I break, Eliza said softly. Or they'll kill me so no one else can. Either way, I don't get to just be Eliza. She paused, then added in an even quieter voice, Dr. Lindell told me about the raids, about the camps being burned. He didn't say it was because of me, but I know. I hear things. People whisper about the Negro girl who knows too much. Some think I'm blessed. Others think I'm unnatural. Confederates think I'm a lie abolitionists invented. The Union thinks I'm a political problem. Nobody thinks I'm just a child who wants to live. Caldecott swallowed hard. What do you want, Eliza? If you could have anything. For the first time since he had met her, her composed expression cracked. Tears filled her eyes, held in place, as if she had learned long ago that crying was dangerous. I want to forget, sir, she whispered. Just for one day. I want to forget everything I've seen and everything I've heard. I want to be a normal child who doesn't remember her mother's face when Master sold her, who doesn't remember exactly what she said. Be good, baby girl, be good, and maybe we see each other in heaven. Who doesn't remember the sound of chains or how she tried not to cry because crying made Master angry and he beat her? Her voice trembled. I don't want to remember the night the overseer came to the quarters and took Jenny. She was only 14. I heard everything through the walls. I heard her crying. I heard him laughing. And I can't ever forget it, no matter how much I want to, no matter how much I pray. Her voice had risen without her realizing, and Ruth stirred in the corner. Eliza immediately quieted herself, glancing toward her guardian with concern. When she continued, she spoke barely above a breath. I remember every person I ever saw whipped, every child stolen from their mother, every woman who went into Master's house at night and came out different. I remember the exact words the auctioneer used when he sold my baby brother. Good breeding stock, strong back, prime field hand potential. He was 6 years old. Her hands clenched in her lap. I remember the buyer saying, he'll last 15 years if I work him right. Then I'll breed him and get my investment back. I remember my brother's face. He didn't cry. He was too scared. And I remember everything Dr. Caldecott, every single moment of horror, and I can't forget any of it. That's what my gift is, a perfect memory of every nightmare I ever lived. Caldecott felt something inside him give way, something he didn't know had been weak until it snapped. He had spent his life treating people like measurements, charts, examples, data points. He had built an entire intellectual world upon the assumption that people like Eliza were inherently inferior, filing away human suffering behind the tidy walls of theory. But sitting before her, this brilliant, wounded child whose perfect memory chained her to every trauma she had ever seen, he finally understood the human cost of the system he had defended with academic distance. I can't give you forgetting, he said quietly. No one can. I know, sir. Nobody can. But I can do something. I can make sure no one treats you like a specimen anymore. I can make sure you're allowed to be a child, at least as much as you can be, that your abilities belong to you, not to anyone who wants to use them. Can you really do that? She asked. The question wasn't hopeful, more like a fragile wish that dared not expect an answer. Caldecott wasn't certain he could, but looking at her, this child burdened with memory no adult could bear, he knew he had to try. Yes, he said at last. I'll find a way. What about your research, sir? Your theories? What about them? He said wearily. If you help me hide, you can't publish what you found. You'll have to lie. Your colleagues will think you failed. Your reputation. My reputation, Caldecott interrupted, is built on measuring skulls to prove that people like you are inferior. Meeting you has shown me that everything I built was a foundation of lies we told ourselves to justify slavery. Maybe I deserve to lose that reputation. Eliza studied him with those impossibly old eyes. You could publish the truth about me, she said slowly. You'd be famous. You'd prove that colored people can be just as intelligent as white people, maybe more. You'd help the abolition cause. But you destroy me in the process. Caldecott nodded. The moment I publish anything, you become the most famous colored person in America. Every scientist will want you. Every politician will want to parade you around. Southern men will want you dead. Abolitionists will want to turn you into a symbol. You will never know privacy again. Never know peace. You will not be Eliza anymore. You'll be an argument. She looked down. No, sir, I don't want that. I want to learn without being tested. I want to help without being displayed. I want to be me, without carrying the whole race on my shoulders. She hesitated. Then, but what about all the others still enslaved? The ones who might have abilities like mine, or different abilities? What about proving we're not inferior? It was a question that would scar Caldecott's conscience for the rest of his life. The war will prove that, he said, though even he doubted conviction in his voice. When colored men fight as soldiers, when families build their own communities, when people live their own free lives, the truth will come out in thousands of ways. Maybe not as dramatically as you could prove it, but more safely, more sustainably. You don't have to carry this burden alone. You shouldn't have to. But I could help, Eliza insisted. If I let them study me, if I let them prove, they would break you, Caldecott said, sharper than he intended. I've seen what happens to prodigies. I've studied cases. There was a boy in Boston 10 years ago who could calculate faster than any adult, a true genius. Scholars tested him constantly, pushed him, prodded him, made him prove himself again and again. By 15, he suffered a total mental collapse, spent the rest of his life in an asylum, unable to do simple sums. He leaned forward, and he was white, from a wealthy family, protected by social standing. Eliza, what do you think they would do to you? A colored girl, with no legal protection, no family with influence, no resources to shield you. They would use you until you broke, and then they would either discard you or claim your collapse proved their theories of racial inferiority. Eliza's hands trembled. So either I hide what I am or I let them destroy me. I'm giving you a third option, Caldecott said. I'm going to lie in my report. I'm going to say you're interesting, but not exceptional. That your abilities were exaggerated. That more study isn't necessary. And then I'm going to arrange for you and Ruth to go north, to a Quaker school where you can learn in peace and be protected. A place where you can be a child who happens to be brilliant, instead of a specimen locked in a tent. He leaned closer. If they come looking for you anyway, we'll hide you again, change your name, move you somewhere safe. I can't give you forgetting. Eliza, I can't erase the memories you've had to carry, but I can try to make sure that the memories you make from now on are ones worth holding. For the first time since he'd met her, Eliza smiled, a small, fragile flicker in the candlelight, but a real one. Thank you, Dr. Caldecott. Don't thank me yet. We still have to make this work. Over the next 3 days, Caldecott devoted himself to deception with the same obsessive precision he once gave to his research. He crafted his report to the War Department word by word, shaping every sentence to suggest mild interest but ultimate disappointment. Subject demonstrates advanced rote memorization, he wrote, consistent with certain documented cases of savant syndrome. However, deeper examination reveals significant limitations in true comprehension and abstract reasoning. Subject reproduces heard material with impressive accuracy, but shows little evidence of genuine understanding or original thought. Apparent problem-solving ability likely results from pattern recognition, not reasoning. Every word was a lie, and Caldecott felt each of them like splinters under his skin. But he wrote with the steady tone of an experienced scientist, using the kind of dense language that discouraged curiosity. He ended the report with a final dismissal. Subject represents an interesting case study in memory function, but continued scientific investigation is unwarranted. No evidence suggests capabilities that challenge current understanding of racial intellectual capacity. Recommend release from special observation and inclusion in basic educational programs for freed children. When Dr. Lindell read the draft, he looked at Caldecott with a blend of respect and unease. This is entirely false. Yes, you're throwing away the greatest scientific discovery of your life to protect her. I'm abandoning a lie I believed for years to give one child a chance, Caldecott replied. The War Department may question you, Lindell warned. They sent you because of the reports about her. Then I'll say the reports were exaggerated, that Lieutenant Carmichael got carried away, that the witnesses were unreliable, that she's bright but nothing extraordinary. He met Lindell's gaze. Will you support my conclusion? Lindell hesitated. After a long moment, he nodded. I've seen enough suffering. If we can prevent one child from being torn apart by people who want to use her, that's worth whatever lies we must tell. Yes, I'll support you, even though the truth is different. He paused. But, Samuel, this destroys your career. Once this report is filed, you can never publish the truth. You can never claim credit for discovering the most remarkable mind you've ever encountered. Your entire field, craniology, racial science, none of it will make sense anymore. I know. Are you prepared for that? Caldecott considered the question. He thought of the years spent measuring skulls, drafting theories, building a professional identity that he now understood was built on a foundation of elegant prejudice. He could remain in the field, pretending nothing had changed, but every measurement, every lecture, every publication would be hollow, because he would know the truth. A 9-year-old child had disproved everything. I don't have a choice, he said at last. I can't unknow what Eliza showed me. I can't pretend she doesn't exist. All I can choose is what to do with that knowledge, and I choose to protect her, even if it ruins me. On May 22, 1863, Caldecott submitted the falsified report. 2 days later, approval came back. The War Department's reply was brief and indifferent, relieved, even. A black prodigy was a political disaster they didn't want while fighting a war. Better to accept the comforting lie than confront the dangerous truth. But not everyone accepted it. Caldecott's assistant, William Drayton, had seen everything. He had watched the examinations, the miracles, the proofs. When he read the report, he confronted his mentor in their quarters. Sir, this report is fraudulent. You know exactly what she can do. The report contains my conclusions, Caldecott said coolly. Your professionally dishonest conclusions, Drayton shot back. She solved unsolved mathematical problems. She diagnosed conditions you and Lindell missed. She recalled information after a single hearing, information she heard years ago, and you're calling her unremarkable? I'm saying she does require further study, Caldecott replied. That's different. This is your career on the line, Dr. Caldecott, if this comes out. Then my reputation will be destroyed, Caldecott said evenly, and I will deserve it. Drayton stared at him. You're serious. Completely. What if I disagree, he continued, voice tightening. What if I think that scientific truth is more important than one child's comfort? Caldecott fixed him with a steady, weary gaze. Then, he said softly, you will have to decide what kind of man you want to be. Established in his field for anyone to accuse him of professional incompetence or dishonesty. His reputation shielded him even as it hollowed inside him. But privately, after long nights alone in his study, Caldecott began dismantling the intellectual world he had spent decades building. He reread his old measurements, his charts, his supposed proofs of racial hierarchy. For the first time, he saw them not as evidence, but as the architecture of a belief system constructed to justify slavery. Elegant, methodical, wrong. He burned some of his earlier notes, those that felt too poisoned to keep, and locked others away. He stopped lecturing on craniology. He declined invitations to conferences. He quietly withdrew from the field that had once defined him. He never spoke publicly about the girl from the Virginia camp, but he kept his private journals. Page after page, written in a small, precise hand, describing Eliza's tests in detail, her memory, her reasoning, her insight. He wrote about her trauma, her laughter, her fears. He wrote about the truth he had learned from her and the lies he had told to protect her. He hid the journals in a sealed compartment in the Academy's archives, intending to publish them only when it was safe. Years passed. The war ended. Slavery was abolished. Reconstruction rose and faltered. New scientific theories emerged. Old prejudices persisted. And Eliza, now Sarah Mitchell, vanished in the historical record, living the anonymous life Caldecott had fought to secure for her. Caldecott himself faded into academic obscurity. Without his former certainty, he no longer published bold theories or offered confident pronouncements. His colleagues assumed age had dulled him, or that the war had shaken his focus. He never corrected them. He knew the truth. His silence was the price of protecting a child who deserved a life beyond laboratories and headlines. He died in 1889, his journals locked away where curious eyes could not easily find them. Decades later, archivists cataloging forgotten boxes in the Academy's basement discovered a sealed metal case. Inside were Caldecott's notebooks, pages densely filled with his angular handwriting, and a letter written in the unsteady script of an elderly man. For the future historian, whomever you may be, the truth matters, but only when truth does not destroy the innocent. What follows is an account I could not publish in my lifetime. If this document remains sealed beyond my death, then perhaps the world has changed enough to receive it. If not, seal again. Do not let harm come to the child I once knew. SC. The archivists read the journals. They debated their meaning. They wondered whether the story was allegory, exaggeration, or a scientific curiosity suppressed by wartime secrecy. And somewhere in Pennsylvania or farther north, perhaps, an elderly woman named Sarah Mitchell, once called Eliza, may have been alive when the box was opened. If so, she left no trace, no public record, no sensational headline, no scientific scandal, only the quiet life she had begged for, a life she earned, a life she deserved, and the memory, perfect and permanent, of a man who chose mercy over truth so she could have it, established enough that no one dared question his professional judgment. Yet inside, Caldecott himself was no longer the same man. He couldn't look at his measurements, his old publications, or the carefully cataloged skulls gathering dust in cabinets, without seeing Eliza's face in every one of them. He slowly withdrew from the scientific world, turning down invitations to lecture, skipping conferences, and offering nothing but vague, non-committal answers whenever colleagues asked for his thoughts on racial science debates. His scholarly output simply stopped. By 1865, he had quietly resigned from the Academy of Natural Sciences, citing health concerns that were not entirely untrue. The stress of living a double life, protecting a child with a gift beyond comprehension, while pretending his own theories still held meaning, had begun to wear him down physically. He left Philadelphia for a small town in upstate New York and abandoned scientific work altogether. Still, he followed Eliza's life through discreet, coded letters sent by his Quaker contacts, cryptic updates masked in the language they used to protect fugitive slaves. And then, in March of 1865, the letters stopped. The first sign of trouble arrived on March 22nd, when Caldecott received a short and signed note from a traveling minister. The message was chillingly simple. The bird has flown from a nest. Searching, Caldercott's blood ran cold. Among the Quakers, this phrase meant someone under protection had gone missing. The bird has flown meant Eliza was gone. He left for Pennsylvania the next morning, traveling by rail through a countryside still wounded by war. The Confederacy was collapsing. Lee would surrender in 3 weeks, but lawlessness consumed the border regions. Deserted soldiers, wandering refugees, disbanded units, and opportunistic criminals drifted freely through areas where civil authority barely existed. The Quaker school stood on the outskirts of a small town called Redstone, about 40 miles west of Philadelphia. Once a farmhouse, it had been converted into a modest 2-story schoolhouse that sheltered and educated about 30 freed children. When Caldecott arrived, he found the community in a state of quiet panic. Hannah Pembroke, the school's director, was a stern woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen far too much suffering to shock easily. Yet when she met with Caldecott in her office, her hands trembled. Sarah, though we knew her only as Sarah Mitchell, disappeared on the evening of March 17th, Hannah said. Ruth reported her missing when she didn't return for evening prayers. Sarah had been reading in the library, as usual. Ruth left her there at about 6 o'clock. When she returned at 7, Sarah was gone. The library door had been standing open. The book Eliza had been reading lay on the floor, pages bent. A chair was overturned. Papers were scattered, but there was no blood, no obvious violence. Did anyone see anything? Caldecott asked, his throat tight. Several children reported seeing a black lacquered carriage on the road that afternoon, Hannah said, pulled by 2 horses. The driver wore a long coat and kept his face covered. One child said she saw 2 men in dark clothing walking near our property line around 5 o'clock. But we often have travelers passing, and the children thought nothing of it. And the authorities? Caldecott pressed. Hannah's expression hardened with bitterness. Yes, the constable came, asked a handful of questions, wrote something in his notebook, then told us freed Negro children wander off all the time, that she had probably gone looking for family or been lured by promises of work. He said there was nothing to investigate. When I insisted there were signs of a struggle, he asked whether anything valuable was missing. When I said no, he claimed that proved she left by choice. He hasn't returned. And Ruth? What does she believe? Ruth is certain Sarah was taken, Hannah said. She says Sarah would never leave without telling her. They were inseparable. More than that, Ruth said Sarah had been frightened all week. She felt watched. She said she'd seen the same man in town 3 different times, always standing off at a distance, always staring toward the school. Did Sarah describe him? Caldecott asked. A tall man, thin, dark hair, wearing spectacles. Ruth said Sarah thought he looked like a teacher or a clerk, someone educated. Hannah hesitated. Sarah also told Ruth she'd been having nightmares. Nightmares about being examined again, about men with instruments measuring her skull, asking endless questions. She made Ruth promise that if anything happened, she'd burn a letter Sarah had hidden under her mattress. Caldercott's chest tightened. Did Ruth burn it? No, Hannah said. She thought I should see it first. She believed it might help us find her. Hannah opened a desk drawer and removed a carefully folded sheet of paper. You should read this, Dr. Caldecott. Sarah, Eliza mentioned you by name. The letter was written in Eliza's precise, meticulous handwriting, more like that of a trained adult than a child. To whoever finds this, my name is not Sarah Mitchell. That is the name I was given for safety. My real name is Eliza Davis. I am writing because I am afraid. For the past week, I have been followed. I remember the man's face perfectly. I remember everything. I saw him watching the school on March 10th at 2:47 p.m., March 12th at 9:23 a.m., and March 15th at 4:16 p.m. Each time he stood about 200 yards away near the elm by the road, watching through a spyglass. He wrote in a notebook afterward, I believe someone has learned the truth about me and plans to take me. If I vanish, please tell Dr. Samuel Caldecott of Philadelphia. He knows who I am and what I can do. He tried to protect me by lying in his report and giving me a new name. But I think someone discovered the truth anyway. I don't know if they will study me, silence me, or use me for something I can't imagine. I only know that I am afraid in a way I have not felt since slavery. Dr. Caldecott told me I didn't have to prove anything, that I could just be Eliza, but maybe that was never possible. Maybe extraordinary abilities always make someone a target. Maybe I was naive to think I could hide. If something happens to me, I want someone to know I existed. I could remember everything I ever heard or saw. I could solve problems adults could not solve. I understood things I was never taught. I was not what the scientists claim Negro people are. I was proof their theories were wrong. And whether I live or die, that truth remains. Someone should know it. I am writing this on March 16th, 1865 at 11:34 p.m. If you are reading this, it means I was right. To be afraid. Eliza Davis, known here as Sarah Mitchell, age 11 years and 1 month. Caldecott read the letter 3 times, each reading cutting deeper, each line tightening around his chest. It was unmistakably Eliza's voice, analytical even in terror, documenting danger with the same careful precision she applied to everything. A child forced to write her own evidence because her perfect memory had taught her what needed to be preserved. She had been afraid, and she had been right, and Caldecott had failed to protect her. When was this written? He asked hoarsely, though the letter itself made it clear. The night before she disappeared, Hannah said. Ruth found it the next evening when Sarah didn't return. So she knew, he whispered. She knew she was in danger, and she stayed anyway. What choice did she have? Hannah said gently. She was 11, a freed Negro girl with nothing but forged papers, no relatives, no resources. Where could she run? She could only wait and hope she was mistaken. Caldecott stood abruptly, the letter crumpling slightly in his grasp. I need to speak with Ruth, and I need to see the place she was taken from. Ruth was a broken shadow of herself. Caldecott found her in the small room she had shared with Eliza, sitting on the narrow bed, clutching one of the girl's possessions, a blue hair ribbon Eliza had treasured. When Caldecott entered, Ruth looked up with red-rimmed eyes. You're him, she whispered, the doctor from the camp, the one who helped her. Yes, he said softly. She's gone, Ruth choked. My baby's gone. I couldn't protect her. Her voice cracked. I promised myself, when we left that plantation, when God finally let us be free, that I'd never let nothing happen to her again. But I failed. I failed her, and she's gone. And I can't do nothing, 'cause I don't remember things like she did. I don't remember that man's face clear like she could. I ain't special like she was. Caldecott sat beside her. Tell me everything you remember, he said. No detail is too small. Across the next hour, Ruth recounted every moment leading to Eliza's disappearance. The tall, thin man with spectacles and a dark coat, the way Eliza had become more withdrawn, the nightmares that left her gasping awake. She told me, Ruth said, that the worst part of remembering everything is you can't make nightmares fade. Normal folks forget dreams quick. But Eliza, she remembered every nightmare like it was real life. So every bad dream just added to what she was already carrying. Every terror became permanent. Did she say anything unusual those last days? Caldecott asked. Anything that might tell us who was watching her, or why? Ruth hesitated, then nodded slowly. March 16th, she said. We were walking to town, and she suddenly stopped. She was staring at a man across the street. I asked what was wrong. She said, that man's coat. I remember that fabric. I heard Dr. Drayton talking about it back in Virginia. He said his brother was a tailor who used that exact imported wool, navy blue with a gray thread pattern. She said she'd only heard him describe it once, for maybe half a minute, but she remembered it perfect. And she asked, why would someone wearing that particular will be all the way out here? Caldecott felt his blood freeze. Drayton, he whispered. William Drayton. My assistant. You think he? I don't know, Caldecott said, pacing. But he saw everything. He knew exactly what Eliza could do, and he wanted to publish our findings, believed the scientific truth mattered more than her safety. I persuaded him to stay silent, but he wiped a trembling hand across his mouth. If he told someone else, if he shared her existence with another researcher, or even sold the information, why? Ruth whispered, for money or fame, or because he truly believed the world deserved to study her, regardless of the cost. Caldecott felt sick. I trusted him, he said. I thought he understood. Leaving Ruth, he went to examine the library where Eliza had vanished. It was a small room lined with shelves of donated books, perhaps 200 volumes in total. A single window overlooked the road. Someone had righted the overturned chair, but the scuff marks remained. Papers were strewn across the floor, pages from a mathematics text filled with Eliza's delicate handwritten annotations. Hannah stood silently in the doorway. The constable said this didn't prove anything, she murmured, that she might have knocked the chair over herself. But Caldecott immediately saw what the constable had ignored, or chosen not to see. The chair had been knocked backward violently. The scattered papers followed a spray pattern consistent with a sudden struggle, and on the windowsill, barely visible, were faint marks where the wood had been forced upward from outside. They entered through the window, Caldecott said, probably while she was absorbed in her book. She wouldn't have heard them until they were already inside. He pictured it, sickened. She tried to stand, he said, knocked over the chair, scattered the pages, but they overpowered her, fast. She was tiny, 11 years old. They likely gagged her instantly. The whole abduction took less than a minute. But why no mud at the window? Hannah asked softly. Because they left through the door, Caldecott said. He pointed at the faint smudges leading across the floorboards. 2 sets of footprints. Adult men. He knelt at the doorway. And here, look. Caught on a splinter was a dark thread of expensive wool. Hannah's face drained of color. So it was planned, she whispered. Professional. Yes, Caldecott said grimly. This wasn't random. They came for a specific target. For the next 3 days, Caldecott plunged into an investigation with an obsession that bordered on mania. He hired a private detective, a former Pinkerton man named Marcus Webb, known for retrieving missing persons. He offered a substantial reward. He wrote discreet inquiries to every contact he had in the scientific and medical communities, probing for rumors of a Negro prodigy, strange research proposals, unusual recruiting efforts. And then, finally, he confronted William Drayton, found his former assistant in Philadelphia, working quietly at Pennsylvania Hospital as a junior physician. When Caldecott stepped unannounced into his office, Drayton's expression shifted. First surprise, then something unmistakably close to guilt. Dr. Caldecott, I wasn't expecting. Where is she? Caldecott's voice cut to the room like a blade, cold, restrained fury trembling underneath. I don't know what. Don't lie to me, William. His voice sharpened. Eliza Davis, the girl from Virginia. She vanished from her school in Pennsylvania on March 17th. That same day, a man in an expensive navy wool coat was seen watching her. A coat made from fabric I heard you describe once. So I'll ask again, where is she? Drayton's face drained of all color. He closed the office door quickly. Lower your voice, he whispered. Please, tell me what you did. I didn't do anything. I kept my promise. I never published our findings. I never told anyone what she could do. Then why? Caldecott hissed. Was someone wearing your brother's tailored fabric watching her school? Silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Finally, Drayton collapsed into his chair. I swear, he murmured, rubbing his face. I didn't tell anyone directly, but what? Caldecott demanded. Drayton swallowed. Last fall, I attended a medical conference in Boston. I had been drinking. Another researcher was lecturing on racial intelligence, citing your work, your measurements, your theories. I got angry. I said, God help me. I said the theories were wrong, that I'd seen evidence that would overturn everything. Caldecott felt his breath stop. I didn't give details, Drayton insisted. I didn't mention her name or where she was, or even that she was a child. I just hinted. I said I had witnessed a case that proved Negro cognitive capacity could exceed white capacity. Who did you say this to? Caldecott asked, voice hollow. Dr. Edmund Voss, Harvard Medical School. He studies cognitive development. He pushed for details. I refused. He kept asking whether you documented the case. I let slip that you had, and that the documentation was sealed, and that it was sealed to protect the subject. Caldecott felt the room tilt. You told Edmund Voss that I had sealed evidence of an extraordinary Negro intellect, he said quietly. You might as well have drawn him a map. I thought, Drayton whispered, I thought if I mentioned it vaguely, without specifics, it would be harmless. It was drunken frustration. I never imagined. Voss is a collector, Caldecott said, his voice drained of life. He's obsessed with rare cognitive cases. He has wealthy patrons who enjoy unusual human subjects. He runs a private research compound in Western Maryland. I've heard rumors that the people taken there don't always come out. Drayton stared at him, ashen. You think Voss took her? I think you handed him the first thread. Caldecott said, a man like Voss could follow that thread anywhere. If he learned I documented something in Virginia in 1863, he could trace my travels. He could track refugees from that camp. He could find a Quaker school with a freedman's girl who was exceptionally bright. Caldecott stepped toward the door. You killed her, William. Drayton flinched as if struck. Even if you never laid a hand on her, you killed her by speaking when you promised silence. Your pride, your need to feel clever, your need to seem insightful in front of other scholars, that is what put her in danger. And if she dies, you will live with that truth for the rest of your life. Drayton broke down, weeping at his desk. But the confrontation, cathartic as it was, brought Caldecott no closer to finding Eliza. He traveled to Boston, to Harvard, searching for Edmund Voss. Voss was elusive. His colleagues claimed he was traveling. His private facility in Maryland, remote, unmarked, hidden behind dense woods, was protected by guards who denied Voss was there and refused entry. Marcus Webb, the Pinkerton investigator, had no better success. The trail ends in Pennsylvania, Webb reported. Witnesses saw a black carriage leaving Redstone the night she vanished, heading southeast. After that, nothing. If they reached that Maryland compound, she could be anywhere by now. These private facilities answer to no one. Research subjects go in and are never heard from again. In late April, mere days after Lee's surrender ended the war, Caldecott received an unexpected visitor. A middle-aged man with stiff military posture appeared at his door in upstate New York. He introduced himself only as Colonel Hayes of the War Department. Dr. Caldecott, Hayes said, I need to speak with you regarding your 1863 report on the Negro subject examined in Virginia. Caldecott felt his chest tighten. That case was closed, he said. It was, Hayes replied, but circumstances have changed. A researcher has raised concerns that your report may have been falsified, that the subject demonstrated abilities far beyond what you recorded. The room seemed to shrink around Caldecott. Which researcher? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Dr. Edmund Voss of Harvard. Hayes said, he claims he has information suggesting the subject possesses extraordinary cognitive abilities that you deliberately concealed. He argues that such abilities represent a national resource. He is petitioning for permission to locate and re-examine the subject. Voss already has her, Caldecott said bitterly. He doesn't need permission. He abducted her in March. Hayes remained unmoved. We have no evidence of that. Then investigate Caldecott said sharply. She disappeared from a Quaker school. There were witnesses, signs of struggle, forcing a window. Local authorities found insufficient evidence of foul play. Hayes said calmly. Their report concluded she likely left voluntarily. Because, Caldecott snapped, they do not care about a missing Negro child. Hayes folded his hands behind his back. Regardless, Dr. Caldecott, the War Department requires clarity. If your report was accurate, we consider the matter closed. But if you falsified your findings, he paused. We need to know. Caldecott now stood at the edge of a precipice. If he confessed the truth, he would be disgraced, ruined, possibly prosecuted. And he would confirm that Eliza's abilities were real, intensifying the government's desire to hunt her down. If he maintained the lie, he would protect her, but leave her alone in the shadows, with no official acknowledgement she even mattered. Either choice could doom her, and Hayes waited for his answer. Interest in finding her. My report was accurate, he said finally. The subject was interesting, but not exceptional. Dr. Voss is mistaken. Then why do you believe he took her? Colonel Hayes asked. Because Voss is obsessed with rare cases. Caldecott replied. Even someone moderately unusual would attract his attention. It doesn't mean she's what he thinks she is. Hayes studied him for a long, tense moment. Dr. Caldecott, the war is ending. The nation is about to confront the question of what to do with millions of freed slaves. If there were proof that Negroes could possess extraordinary intelligence, proof that couldn't be easily dismissed, it would have enormous political consequences. It could strengthen the abolitionist argument, influence Reconstruction policy, shape the future. He paused. Are you sure you want to suppress such evidence merely to protect one child's privacy? It was the same question Eliza had asked him, the same impossible dilemma. One girl's life versus the greater truth, mercy versus political transformation. And once again, Caldecott chose a child. I am certain, he said. My report stands. Hayes left unsatisfied, but seemingly unwilling to push the matter further. The War Department had larger crises than an obscure scientific report from 1863. Still, Caldecott knew time was running out. If Voss had taken Eliza, if she was hidden in a facility, she was beyond reach of any official intervention. No one would investigate. No authority would intervene. She would simply vanish. Another nameless subject in someone's secret research, erased without record. In desperation, Caldecott made one final push. He contacted every abolitionist group he had ever worked with, every Quaker network, every individual still operating on the remnants of the Underground Railroad. He offered increasingly large rewards for information. He traveled personally to Maryland, searching for locals who might have heard rumors of Voss's compound. Then, in late May, an anonymous letter arrived. The handwriting was shaky, likely from someone with little formal education. Doctor, there is a place in western Maryland near Cumberland, an old estate called Thornhill. Dr. Voss uses it for his work. They say he keeps subjects there, studies them in secret. They say a colored girl was brought there in March. I do not know if she is still there or if she lives. I do not know what is done in that place. But if you are looking for your girl, that is where to look. Do not come yourself. They watch for anyone asking questions. But you should know, should God give you the means to save her. A friend. Caldecott stared at the letter until the words blurred. Thornhill near Cumberland, Maryland. At last, a location, but also a warning. If he went himself, he would likely be turned away, or worse. He needed men who knew how to move unseen, who could investigate quietly. He hired Marcus Webb again, this time for a mission far more dangerous, surveillance and possible extraction. Webb assembled a small team of former Union soldiers experienced in covert operations. They traveled to Maryland and identified Thornhill, an isolated estate surrounded by high stone walls, guarded and forbidding. For 2 weeks, Webb's team watched from a distance. They observed guards patrolling at all hours, supply wagons arriving with crates of equipment, Dr. Voss himself coming and going twice. And through a third-floor window, they occasionally glimpsed a small, dark-skinned figure passing behind the glass. Someone's up there, Webb reported upon his return in mid-June. Can't confirm it's your girl, but someone young, someone small, is being kept in that room. The window's barred. The door locks from the outside. Definitely a prisoner. Can you extract her? Caldecott asked. Webb hesitated. Possibly, but it's dangerous. The guards are armed. Breaking into private property could be considered kidnapping if we're wrong. And if things go bad, if someone gets shot, you'd be implicated. You'd lose everything. I've already lost everything that matters, Caldecott said. Can you do it or not? We can try, Webb said. No guarantees. The extraction was scheduled for the night of June 23, 1865. Webb and his men would infiltrate the estate, reach the third floor, retrieve the captive, and escape before anyone raised the alarm. Caldecott waited in a safe house 10 miles away, pacing in torment, imagining every failure, every possible horror. Just before dawn on June 24th, Webb returned, alone. We got in, he said, exhausted. Made it to the third floor, found the room. He paused. But, doctor, the room was empty, recently cleared out. What do you mean, empty? There was a cot, a desk, medical equipment, charts on the walls, observations, memory tests, physical evaluations, hundreds of pages of notes, all dated from late March through June 20th, 3 days before we arrived. Was it her? Caldecott's voice cracked. Was it Eliza? The notes don't use a name, Webb said. Just subject E. But the abilities described match everything you told me. Perfect recall, high-level reasoning, pattern analysis. They tested her extensively. Some of the procedures. He clenched his jaw. Some weren't humane, but she was alive 3 days ago. Where is she now? Caldecott whispered. The notes, and abruptly, Webb said. The last entry reads, subject shows severe psychological deterioration. Memory intact, but emotional stability declining. Nightmares increasing in frequency and intensity. Subject struggling to distinguish memories from present reality. Recommendation: terminate study and relocate subject to appropriate facility. Caldecott's blood went cold. Appropriate facility, he repeated. That could mean anything. An asylum, another research site, or they dispose of her, Webb said bluntly. A subject who's breaking down is a liability. Someone who knows too much. Did you find anything else? Nothing. The room was cleaned thoroughly. But I took the notes, all of them. You need to read them. They describe everything that was done to her. Every test. Every measurement. Webb couldn't finish. Caldecott would spend the next week reading Voss's notes, clinical, methodical, and unbearable in their precision. Voss's notes were methodical, emotionless, and horrific in their detachment. He had pushed Eliza far beyond the limits of ordinary endurance, probing every corner of her abilities. He deprived her of sleep to observe whether exhaustion altered memory formation. He exposed her to painful stimuli to test retention of trauma. He presented her with problems that no one could reasonably solve, carefully recording not just her successes but her failures, evaluating her every emotional reaction with the same clinical precision he used to document her cognitive strengths. Through all of it, threaded beneath the scientific language, Caldecott could read something else, the unmistakable evidence of a child breaking. The early entries described Eliza as compliant, resilient, astonishingly capable. The later entries spoke of resistance, tears, refusals, moments when she would no longer cooperate. Then came the truly devastating lines. Subject displays increasing dissociation. States she cannot distinguish which memories arise from enslavement, which from Virginia camp, and which from current confinement. All memories exist with equal immediacy. Subject reports past traumas as present experiences. Psychological burden of perfect recall becoming unsustainable. The final entries were the worst. Voss noted she had stopped speaking entirely, except when answering direct questions. She rocked herself at night. She seemed to be retreating inward, the accumulation of remembered horrors overwhelming her. And then came the abrupt conclusion of the journal. Study terminated. Subject relocated. No location given. No explanation. Simply gone. When Caldecott tried to track Voss down, the man had already vanished from public life. His position at Harvard had been quietly terminated. The Thornhill estate had been sold to new owners who denied any knowledge of its prior use. Voss himself had disappeared, taking his records and his secrets with him. Then in July, Caldecott received one last piece of information, a letter from a Union officer who was dying of tuberculosis and wished to clear his conscience. "I was part of a special unit," the officer wrote. "We handled sensitive assignments for the War Department. In late March 1865, we were ordered to locate and transport a Negro girl deemed a national security risk. We were told nothing else, only that she needed to be secured and delivered to a facility in Maryland for evaluation." His unit found her at the school in Pennsylvania on March 17th. They extracted her quietly. "We were professionals," he wrote. "Clean, quick, no real violence, though she struggled." They handed her over to the facility. Then he learned the truth. The facility was not government-run, the officer continued. It was private. The girl was no threat to national security. She was a scientific curiosity, promised to a civilian researcher. We unknowingly committed kidnapping under the guise of official orders. The letter continued with even darker revelations. "I later learned she was held there for 3 months. I do not know what was done to her. In late June, she was moved again. One of my former unit men was hired for transport. He told me years later, drunk, that they took a colored girl from Maryland to a federal asylum in Washington. Said she was in poor condition, malnourished, nonverbal, unresponsive. Paperwork listed her as a freed Negro suffering from mental collapse. No family, no legal identity. They delivered her to St. Elizabeth's." When asked what became of her, the man had replied, "Asylums like that don't keep good records on charity cases. Too many broken souls from the war. One more lost Negro girl disappears without a trace." The letter ended. "I am writing to you, Dr. Caldecott, because your name appeared in documentation I saw in 1865. You examined her first. You tried to protect her. Your falsified report was discovered by someone who saw value in what you found. She was taken because of your discovery, and she was destroyed because you could not shield her. I cannot undo my part. I can only tell you the truth before I die. If she is alive in that asylum, she has been there 8 years, forgotten. If she is dead, she died alone. Either way, I helped put her there. God forgive me." Signed, Thomas Ricks, Captain, late of the 7th Maryland Infantry, dated September 3rd, 1873. Caldecott rushed to Washington immediately. St. Elizabeth's Hospital for the Insane sprawled across federal grounds, housing hundreds. Soldiers shattered by battle. Refugees traumatized by the upheaval of freedom. Former slaves unable to find stability in their new lives. Its records were chaotic, incomplete, and frequently non-existent for charity patients. He spent weeks combing admission logs, patient rosters, death records. He bribed orderlies for access to restricted wings. He walked through wards filled with vacant-eyed patients, searching for a young black woman who might be Eliza, now 19 as she had survived. He never found her. Dozens of young black women languished in the asylum, many admitted around the right dates, diagnoses vague and dismissive. Melancholia, mania, hysteria, derangement. None of the records mentioned anything that would identify Eliza's abilities. None of the patients he was allowed to see showed the slightest recognition when he spoke. Perhaps she wasn't there. Perhaps she was hidden in a restricted ward. Perhaps she had died and been buried in the asylum's vast field of anonymous graves, where hundreds of unclaimed bodies lay without markers. In October 1873, after exhausting every lead, Caldecott gave up. He returned to upstate New York hollowed out, a man carrying the unbearable weight of failure. He had failed Eliza in every imaginable way. Failed to keep her hidden, failed to stop her abduction, failed to rescue her, failed even to discover her fate. He gathered all his work on racial science, not only his notes on Eliza, but his measurements, theories, and publications. He fed every page into his fireplace and watched the years of his career burn to ash. If the foundation of his life's work was built on lies, then let the lies be erased. But he kept 3 items. He placed them in a sealed box with instructions to deliver to the Academy of Natural Sciences 50 years after his death, not to be opened until 1939. Inside the box lay 3 items: a small blue ribbon Eliza had worn in her hair during their first meeting in Virginia, a torn page from a medical textbook covered in her neat, childish annotations, and a letter. The letter was addressed simply to whoever finds this and signed by Samuel Caldecott. In it, he described everything: his first examination of Eliza Davis, her abilities in all their astonishing detail, the tests he conducted, the conclusions he reached, and the lies he felt forced to tell. He explained why he had tried to hide her brilliance, why he falsified his report, and how his protection ultimately failed. He recounted her abduction, her captivity, her collapse under the weight of perfect memory, and her disappearance into a federal asylum, or her death. At the end, he wrote the questions that had tormented him for the rest of his life. I devoted my career to proving the intellectual inferiority of the Negro race. Then I met a 9-year-old Negro girl whose abilities surpassed those of every person I had ever examined, of any race. I had a choice: maintain my theories and destroy the evidence, or accept the truth and destroy my life's work. I chose a middle path. I tried to save the girl by hiding the truth, but in doing so, I may have condemned her to death, or worse, condemned her to live in an asylum with her perfect, unbearable memory. Was I a coward? Should I have published the truth and allowed Eliza to become famous, studied, and burdened with representing her entire race? Or was I right to try to give one child a chance at a normal life, even if the world lost something extraordinary? I cannot know. I will die not knowing. I leave this question to you, whoever you are, and whenever you read this. What was the right choice? What should I have done? Dr. Samuel Caldecott died on March 17, 1889, exactly 24 years after Eliza vanished. His obituary in the Philadelphia Inquirer briefly mentioned his early work in craniology, noting that he had withdrawn from scientific study decades earlier for undisclosed personal reasons. There was no mention of Eliza Davis. The sealed box was tucked into the Academy's archives and forgotten. It resurfaced only in 1941 during a wartime reorganization. Historians examined the contents, debated whether the story was authentic, but by then Eliza Davis existed too far back in the haze of history. Uncertain, unverified, a footnote at best. Even during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, when lost stories of Black excellence came roaring back into public conversation, Eliza's story remained buried. She is a ghost now, a child who may have possessed one of the most extraordinary minds ever recorded, a girl born into slavery, who briefly crossed paths with the scientific establishment at a moment when the nation was poised between destruction and rebirth, and who then vanished into machinery designed to hide, silence, or erase people like her. Did she survive the experiments? Did she die in Voss's hidden facility? Did she wither away in St. Elizabeth's? Did her perfect memory finally overwhelm her? Or, against all odds, did she endure somehow? We will never know. All that remains is Caldecott's unanswered question and the lingering image of a small girl with eyes that held everything she had ever seen, heard, or suffered. A child who might have changed history, if history had allowed her to live. Instead, she became another casualty of a system that could not tolerate her existence. What do you think happened to Eliza? Do you believe she survived? Should Dr. Caldecott have published the truth, no matter the cost of her safety? Share your thoughts below. If this forgotten fragment of American history moved you the way it moved me, Be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, and share this story with someone who values the complicated, often tragic narratives hidden beneath the surface of our past. Thank you for listening. And remember, history is full of voices that were silenced, stories buried intentionally, truths declared too dangerous to speak. Our duty is to remember them, to keep them alive when the world tried to erase them. Until next time.